I never thought I'd be the kind of grandmother who'd walk out of a family party carrying my screaming grandson in my arms, but that's exactly what I did. And I'd do it again. Let me tell you something about family. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you deepest. I learned that lesson at 72 years old, standing in my daughter's backyard, staring at my 4-year-old grandson's beautiful curls lying in clumps on the patio floor like trash. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand how we got here, because this story didn't start at that party. It started 3 years earlier, the day my daughter Claire brought Derek home for Thanksgiving. The moment he walked through my door, I felt it. You know that feeling? When your stomach turns cold and your mother's instinct screams that something's wrong, but everyone else is smiling so you swallow it down. That's what happened. Derek was charming, too charming. The kind of man who compliments your cooking while his eyes are already scanning the room for something better. The kind who shakes your hand just a little too hard, like he's proving something. Claire was glowing though. My baby girl, 35 years old and finally happy after 2 failed relationships. Who was I to rain on her parade? So I smiled. I served the turkey. I kept my mouth shut. That was my first mistake. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. The warning signs came slow at first. Little things. Derek would make jokes about my age, calling me the ancient one, or asking Claire if I'd remembered to take my dementia pills. Everyone would laugh, including Claire, and I'd force myself to chuckle along. It's just humor, I told myself. Don't be so sensitive. But those jokes had teeth, and over time, those teeth drew blood. Then came the comments about my house. Claire grew up here? Must have been rough living in such a small place. My house is 1,400 square feet, perfectly adequate for the life I built after Claire's father died. But Derek grew up with money, the kind of money that makes people think they're better than everyone else. He'd walk through my living room like he was touring a museum of poverty, touching my furniture with this amused look on his face. Claire started changing. She'd been a teacher, passionate about her third graders, always bringing home stories about little Tommy who finally learned to read or sweet Maria who drew her a picture. But Derek didn't like her teaching. It's not a real career, he'd say. You're basically a babysitter with a degree. 6 months after they got married, Claire quit. Just like that. 20 years of teaching, gone. I asked her about it once. We were having lunch, just the 2 of us, and I said, "Honey, are you happy?" She looked at me with these tired eyes and said, "Mom, Derek's right. Teaching was holding me back. Now I can focus on being a good wife." A good wife. My daughter, who'd been so independent, so strong, was now measuring her worth by how well she served a man who didn't deserve to breathe the same air as her. But I kept quiet. Because that's what mothers do, right? We watch our children make mistakes and we bite our tongues until they bleed. Then Oliver was born. My grandson. My sweet, perfect grandson with his father's dark hair but his mother's gentle eyes. I fell in love the moment I saw him. And for a while, things got better. Derek seemed softer around the baby. Claire seemed more like herself. I thought maybe I'd been wrong about him. Maybe becoming a father would change him. I was fooling myself. Oliver grew into the most beautiful toddler you've ever seen. Those dark curls that bounced when he ran, that laugh that sounded like music. He was joy in human form. And he loved his grandma. Every weekend, Claire would bring him over, and we'd have our special time. I'd read him stories, we'd bake cookies, he'd fall asleep in my lap while we watched cartoons. But Derek started putting limits on our visits. "He needs to be home more," he'd say. "You're spoiling him." Then it became every other weekend. Then once a month. Claire would apologize, making excuses about Derek's schedule or Oliver's nap times, but I could see the truth in her eyes. Derek was cutting me out, piece by piece. The real trouble started about 6 months ago. Claire called me crying at 2 in the morning. I could barely understand her through the sobs, but I caught enough. Derek had been out with his friends, came home drunk, started yelling at her about dinner not being ready even though it was the middle of the night. Oliver had woken up scared, and Derek had screamed at him to shut up. "Mom, I don't know what to do," she whispered. "He's never been like this before." I wanted to tell her to pack a bag and come to my house right then. I wanted to tell her that's exactly who Derek had always been, I'd just been too much of a coward to say it. Instead, I said, "Do you feel safe?" And she said yes. She said it was just the alcohol, just the stress from work, just a bad night. Just. Always an excuse. Over the next few months, Claire stopped calling as much. When I'd reach out, she'd text back that everything was fine, they were just busy. The few times I did see her, she looked thin. Tired. There were shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. And Oliver, my sweet Oliver, had become quiet. That bouncing, joyful little boy was turning into a timid child who spoke in whispers. I tried talking to Claire about it. She shut me down every time. "Mom, you're being dramatic. Derek's a good father. A good husband. We're fine." But we weren't fine. Nothing was fine. Then came the invitation to Derek's birthday party. A big celebration at their house, the first family gathering in months. I almost didn't go. Something in my gut told me to stay home. But it was a chance to see Oliver, to see Claire, so I put on my best dress and drove over with a smile plastered on my face. The party was loud and crowded with Derek's friends and coworkers, people I'd never met who talked about things I didn't understand. Expensive cars and vacation homes and stock portfolios. I felt invisible, which I suppose was the point. Claire was playing hostess, rushing around with trays of appetizers, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. Derek was holding court in the backyard, beer in hand, laughing too loud at his own jokes. I found Oliver inside, sitting alone in the corner of the living room with a toy truck. "Hey sweetheart," I said, kneeling down beside him. "Can Grandma have a hug?" He wrapped his little arms around my neck and held on tight. Too tight. The kind of hug that says please don't let go. "You okay, baby?" I whispered. He nodded against my shoulder, but I felt him trembling. We played together for maybe 20 minutes before Derek's voice boomed from the backyard. "Oliver. Get out here, buddy. Time for your surprise." The way Oliver tensed in my arms sent ice through my veins. "I don't want to go, Grandma," he whispered. "What's wrong, honey?" "Daddy said he has a surprise, but I don't like Daddy's surprises." Before I could ask what he meant, Derek appeared in the doorway. "There's my boy. Come on, everyone's waiting." He wasn't asking. His tone left no room for argument. Oliver's little hand gripped mine. "Grandma, come with me?" So I did. We walked out into that backyard together, his hand in mine, and that's when I saw it. Someone had set up a barber's chair on the patio. One of Derek's friends was standing there with clippers, grinning like an idiot. My stomach dropped. "Surprise, buddy," Derek announced to the crowd. "We're shaving off those baby curls. Time to make you look like a real boy." Oliver's hand squeezed mine so hard it hurt. "No," he said quietly. Then louder, "No, Daddy, I don't want to." Derek's smile didn't waver. "Don't be silly. You're 4 years old. Big boys don't have long hair." "Derek," I said, my voice shaking. "If he doesn't want to." "With all due respect, Margaret, this is between me and my son." The way he said respect made it clear he had none for me. "Now, Oliver, sit in the chair." "No." Oliver was crying now, pressing himself against my legs. I don't wanna. The entire party had gone quiet. Everyone was watching. Claire stood frozen by the grill, her face pale. Derek's smile finally cracked. "Oliver. Chair. Now." What happened next, I'll never forget as long as I live. Derek crossed that patio in 3 strides, grabbed Oliver by the arm, and physically pulled him away from me. My grandson was screaming, reaching for me, and Derek just dragged him. Like he was an object. Like he was nothing. "Derek, stop." I found my voice, but it was too late. He'd already forced Oliver into that chair. The friend with the clippers looked uncomfortable now, but he didn't stop. He turned them on. The buzzing sound mixed with Oliver's screams made something break inside me. I tried to get to him, but someone, one of Derek's friends, blocked my path. "Let them have their father-son moment," he said, like this was normal. Like this was okay. I watched helplessly as those clippers tore through my grandson's beautiful curls. Oliver was sobbing, calling for his mother, calling for me, but Derek held him down with both hands on his shoulders. "Stop being a baby," Derek hissed, quiet enough that only those of us nearby could hear. "You're embarrassing me." When it was done, Oliver's head was completely shaved. Bare. He looked broken. This little boy who'd been so full of life just minutes ago now sat there with tears streaming down his face, hiccuping, his small hands touching his head in confusion. The party guests started clapping. Actually clapping. Like they'd just witnessed something worth celebrating instead of the cruelty it was. Derek stepped back, admiring his work. "There we go. Now you look like a real boy." He turned to his friends, laughing. "Kid's been looking like a girl for years. Finally got to fix that." Something inside me snapped. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But completely. I walked to that chair, brushed past Derek like he didn't exist, and lifted Oliver into my arms. He buried his face in my neck, his whole body shaking. His head felt so bare, so vulnerable under my hand. "Where do you think you're going?" Derek's voice came from behind me. I didn't answer. I just walked. Through the backyard, through the house, toward the front door. "Mom." Claire's voice was sharp. "Mom, what are you doing?" I turned to look at my daughter. Really look at her. And I saw it, the fear in her eyes wasn't for Oliver. It was for what Derek would think. What Derek would say. My daughter had become so small, so scared, that she was willing to let this happen to her own child just to keep the peace. "I'm taking my grandson somewhere safe," I said quietly. "You're being dramatic." Claire's voice rose. "It's just hair. It's just a joke." Just. That word again. Everything was always just something. Just a joke. Just hair. Just bruises that would heal. Just a child's spirit breaking. "Stop being dramatic, Mom." Claire shouted as I opened the front door. "Bring him back right now." But I didn't. I buckled Oliver into my car, and I drove away from that house with my grandson's sobs filling the silence. I didn't know then that I'd just started something I couldn't stop. I didn't know that this moment, this one act of defiance, would set off a chain of events that would tear my family apart and reveal truths I'd spent years trying not to see. All I knew was that sometimes, being dramatic is exactly what's needed. Sometimes, making a scene is the only way to save someone who can't save themselves. And sometimes, quiet justice takes time to unfold, but when it does, it comes for everyone who deserves it. What I didn't know was that the next morning, everything would change in a way I never could have imagined. Oliver fell asleep in my guest bedroom within an hour, exhausted from crying. I sat beside him in the dark, watching his chest rise and fall, my hand resting on his bare head. Without those curls, he looked so different. Older somehow. More fragile. My phone had been buzzing non-stop since we left. 17 missed calls from Claire. 12 text messages. I didn't read them. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I did what any grandmother would do. I called my lawyer. "You're probably thinking that's extreme. Maybe you're right. But here's what you need to understand about men like Derek: they don't stop. They escalate." And that party, that public humiliation of a 4-year-old child, wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. Robert Chambers had handled my late husband's estate 20 years ago. He was semi-retired now, but he answered on the third ring. "Margaret? It's 11 o'clock at night. What's wrong?" I told him everything. Not just about the party, but about the past 3 years. Every red flag I'd ignored, every excuse I'd made, every time I'd watched my daughter shrink a little more. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. "Where's the child now?" Robert asked. "Asleep in my guest room." "And Claire?" "At home with Derek, I assume." Another pause. "Margaret, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer. Has Derek ever physically hurt Oliver? Or Claire?" I opened my mouth to say no. But then I remembered Oliver's trembling in my arms. Claire's bruises that she blamed on being clumsy. The way my grandson had said he didn't like Daddy's surprises. The fear in his eyes. "I don't know," I whispered. "But I think so. I think he has, and I've been too blind to see it." "Okay. Listen to me. Don't send Oliver home tomorrow. If Claire asks, tell her you're giving everyone a cooling-off period. I'll make some calls in the morning. We need to document this properly. After I hung up, I finally looked at Claire's messages. The first few were angry. Bring him back right now. You had no right. Derek is furious. Then they shifted. Mom, please. You're making this worse. It was just hair. The most recent one, sent 10 minutes ago. Fine. Keep him tonight. But this isn't over. That last message sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't Claire's voice. It was Derek's words coming through her phone. I slept in Oliver's room that night, or tried to. Every sound made me jump. Every car that passed on the street made my heart race. I kept expecting Derek to show up, pounding on my door, demanding his son back. But the night stayed quiet. Too quiet. The next morning, Oliver woke up different. The bouncing, chattering little boy I knew had been replaced by someone careful. Someone who asked permission before doing anything. Grandma, can I have cereal? Grandma, is it okay if I watch cartoons? Grandma, are you mad at me? That last question broke my heart. Oh, sweetheart, no. I could never be mad at you. Why would you think that? He touched his head, his fingers running over the stubble. Because of my hair. Daddy said I was being a baby. That I embarrassed him. I pulled him into my lap, breathing in the scent of his strawberry shampoo, or what was left of it. You did nothing wrong, Oliver. Nothing. Do you understand me? What happened yesterday was not your fault. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones hurting you? We were eating pancakes when my doorbell rang. Oliver's whole body went rigid. Is it Daddy? I don't know, baby. Stay here, okay? I looked through the peephole and saw Claire. Alone. She looked like she hadn't slept either, her hair uncombed, wearing yesterday's clothes. I almost didn't open the door. But she's my daughter. No matter what, she's still my daughter. The moment I opened it, she pushed past me. Where is he? Where's Oliver? Claire, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. Her voice was shrill, panicked. Do you have any idea what you've done? Derek is furious. He said if I don't bring Oliver home right now, there will be consequences. There it was. That word. Consequences. The way she said it, with fear dripping from every syllable, told me everything I needed to know. What kind of consequences, Claire? She wouldn't meet my eyes. Just consequences. Mom, please. Give me my son. Mommy. Oliver appeared in the kitchen doorway, his voice small and uncertain. Claire's face crumpled when she saw him. For a second, just a second, I saw my real daughter again. The one who would have never let anyone hurt her child. But then she straightened, and that mask slipped back into place. Oliver, honey, get your shoes. We're going home. I don't want to go home, Oliver whispered. The silence that followed was deafening. Claire stared at her son like he'd just slapped her. What did you say? I don't want to go home. I want to stay with Grandma. Oliver James, you don't get to make that decision. I'm your mother. Now get your shoes. Right. Now. But Oliver didn't move. He looked at me, his eyes pleading, and I made a decision that would change everything. He's staying here, Claire. My daughter's face went white, then red. Excuse me. You heard me. Oliver is staying here until I'm convinced it's safe for him to go home. Safe. Claire's voice rose to a shriek. He's perfectly safe. You're acting like Derek's some kind of monster. He's a good father. He just wanted Oliver to have a haircut. A haircut doesn't require holding down a screaming child in front of 30 people. That wasn't a haircut, Claire. That was a power play. That was cruelty. You don't know what you're talking about. Tears were streaming down Claire's face now. You've never liked Derek. You've been waiting for an excuse to turn me against him since the day we met. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had been waiting. But that didn't make me wrong. Has he hit you? I asked quietly. Claire froze. What? Has Derek ever hit you? Or Oliver? How dare you? Her voice was ice. How dare you stand there and accuse my husband? That's not an answer, Claire. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker across her face. Something that looked like the truth trying to break free. But then she blinked, and it was gone. I want my son. Now. Or I'm calling the police. Go ahead, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. Call them. Tell them your mother is keeping your child safe from a man who traumatized him yesterday. See how that goes. For a moment, I thought Claire might actually do it. Her hand moved to her pocket, reaching for her phone. But then we heard it, a car door slamming outside. Hard. Oliver made a sound I'd never heard before. A whimper, like a wounded animal. He ran behind me, grabbing my legs, his whole body shaking. Claire's face went even paler. Oh God. He followed me. He wasn't supposed to follow me. The doorbell didn't ring. Instead, there was pounding. Aggressive, demanding. Derek's voice came through the door, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Claire. Open this door. Now. Don't, I said, but Claire was already moving. She yanked the door open, and there he was. Derek looked different in the morning light. The charming mask was completely gone. His face was red, his eyes wild. This was the real Derek, the one he'd been hiding for 3 years. Get in the car, he said to Claire. Then his eyes found Oliver, still hiding behind me. And bring my son. Derek, maybe we should just, Claire started. I said, get in the car. His voice boomed through my small house. I've had enough of this nonsense. Your mother has poisoned you against me, and I'm done playing nice. Playing nice. As if anything he'd done had been nice. You're not taking him, I said, stepping forward. Oliver's hands tightened on my legs, but I didn't move. Not like this. Not when he's terrified. Derek's laugh was ugly. Terrified? Of me? I'm his father. I gave him life. And yesterday you humiliated him in front of a crowd of strangers, I shot back. You held him down while he screamed and begged you to stop. That's not love, Derek. That's not fatherhood. That's abuse. The word hung in the air like a bomb. Derek's face went from red to purple. You old witch. You have no idea what you're talking about. I have rights. Legal rights. That's my son, and you're kidnapping him. Kidnapping. I almost laughed. He's my grandson. I'm keeping him safe. Safe from what? From his own father. Derek took a step into my house. I didn't back up. You want to play this game, Margaret? Fine. I'll call the police. I'll have you arrested. I'll make sure you never see Oliver again. Stop it. Claire's voice cut through the tension. Both of you, just stop. Derek, please. Let's go home. We can figure this out later. No. Derek's voice was flat, final. Either she hands over my son right now, or I'm making a phone call that will destroy this family. The way he said it, so calm, so certain, made my blood run cold. This wasn't an idle threat. Derek had something planned. Something specific. What phone call? I asked. His smile was cruel. Wouldn't you like to know? Before I could respond, my own phone rang. Robert's name flashed on the screen. I answered it without taking my eyes off Derek. Margaret, don't let Oliver leave, Robert said urgently. I just got off the phone with a contact at Child Protective Services. Someone called in a report about Derek last year. Suspected abuse. It was investigated but closed due to lack of evidence. But there's a file. There's a history. My heart stopped. What? Someone reported him. Someone who saw something. The case was closed because Claire vouched for him, said everything was fine. But Margaret, if there's been another incident. There has been, I said, staring at Derek. Watching his face change as he realized what I might be learning. Yesterday. In front of witnesses. Then we have grounds. Don't let that child leave. I'm calling CPS back right now. I hung up. The silence in my house was suffocating. What did your lawyer say? Derek asked, his voice too calm. Did he tell you that you're committing a crime? Because you are. This is parental kidnapping, and I will press charges. Go ahead, I said. Press them. But while you're at it, let's talk about that CPS report from last year. The one about you. Claire gasped. Derek's face went blank. I don't know what you're talking about. Funny. Because my lawyer just told me all about it. Someone reported you for suspected child abuse. It was investigated, Derek. There's a file with your name on it. That was nothing. Derek exploded. Some busybody neighbor who didn't understand discipline. It was thrown out because it was baseless. Was it? I took a step closer. Or was it thrown out because Claire protected you? Because she told them everything was fine when it wasn't? Claire was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. She looked between Derek and me like she was watching her whole world collapse. Maybe she was. Claire, I said softly. Tell me the truth. Please. Has he hurt you? Has he hurt Oliver? Answer her, Derek said, his voice low and dangerous. Tell your mother what a wonderful life we have. Tell her how happy you are. Tell her how perfect everything is. But Claire couldn't speak. She just stood there, shaking, tears falling, looking at her husband with eyes full of fear and something else. Something that looked like hatred. That's when Derek made his mistake. He grabbed Claire's arm. Not gently. His fingers dug into her flesh hard enough that she gasped in pain. I said, tell her. And I saw it. The truth I'd been too afraid to see for 3 years. The bruises Claire always explained away. The way she flinched. The fear in Oliver's eyes. It all clicked into place like a puzzle I'd been refusing to solve. Let go of her, I said quietly. Derek's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. He'd revealed himself. The mask had slipped completely, and he knew it. He released Claire's arm and stepped back. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. He pointed at me, his fingers shaking with rage. You've just made the biggest mistake of your life, old woman. By tomorrow, you'll be begging me for mercy. Then he turned and walked out, slamming my door so hard that a picture fell off the wall. Claire collapsed onto my couch, sobbing. Oliver came out from behind me and climbed into her lap, wrapping his small arms around her neck. Don't cry, Mommy. Don't cry. I'm so sorry, Claire whispered into his hair. I'm so sorry. I didn't know if she was apologizing to Oliver or to me. Maybe both. Maybe neither. All I knew was that we'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. Whatever Derek had planned, whatever revenge he was cooking up, was coming. I just didn't know how soon. Claire stayed for 3 hours. We didn't talk much at first. She just held Oliver, rocking him like he was a baby again, whispering apologies into his bare head. I made tea that went cold on the coffee table. Outside, the sun climbed higher, and the world kept spinning like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. When Oliver finally fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from the emotional chaos, Claire looked at me with red, swollen eyes. It started small, she said. Her voice was hollow, like she was talking about someone else's life. Little things. He'd get frustrated about work and snap at me. Then he'd apologize, bring flowers, tell me he was just stressed. I believed him because I wanted to. I wanted to say something, but I'd learned over the years that sometimes silence is the only gift you can give someone who's finally ready to tell the truth. After Oliver was born, it got worse. Derek said I wasn't being a good enough mother. That I was too soft, too permissive. When Oliver would cry at night, Derek would yell at me to make him stop, like I had some magic button I was refusing to press. She wiped her eyes with shaking hands. The first time he grabbed me hard enough to bruise, he cried afterward. Said he didn't know what came over him. Promised it would never happen again. But it did, I said softly. It did. Claire's voice cracked. Over and over. And every time, I told myself it wasn't that bad. Other women had it worse. At least he didn't hit me with a closed fist. At least he didn't break bones. At least. She looked at me with eyes that held 3 years of pain. I became an expert at making excuses, Mom. For him. For myself. For staying. What about Oliver? I asked, even though I was terrified of the answer. Claire's face crumpled. He's never hit him. Not with his hands. But the yelling, the intimidation, the way he'd punish Oliver for normal kid things, I told myself that wasn't abuse. That was just strict parenting. Old-fashioned discipline. She let out a bitter laugh. God, listen to me. I sound insane. You sound scared, I corrected. There's a difference. That neighbor who called CPS last year? Claire continued, like she needed to get it all out before she lost her nerve. She heard Derek screaming at Oliver through the walls. Oliver was 2.5, crying because he'd spilled juice on Derek's laptop. Derek lost it. Just completely lost it. He was yelling so loud that Oliver threw up from fear. I felt sick. And you told CPS everything was fine. I was terrified. Claire's voice rose, then dropped again when she glanced at Oliver sleeping. Derek said if I told them the truth, they'd take Oliver away from both of us. That I'd lose my son because I'd failed to protect him. He said he'd tell them I was an unfit mother, that I had mental health issues, that I couldn't be trusted. And I believed him, Mom. I believed every word. Oh, Claire. I moved to sit beside her, taking her hand. It was cold as ice. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were right about him from the beginning, and I couldn't admit that. Because I was ashamed. Because every time I thought about leaving, Derek would have a good week, and I'd convince myself it was getting better. She squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. And because he threatened you too. My blood went cold. What? He said if I ever left him or told anyone the truth, he'd make sure you never saw Oliver again. He'd file for full custody, claim you were a bad influence, get a restraining order. He said he had lawyer friends who could make it happen. Claire's tears fell faster now. I couldn't risk losing both of you. I couldn't. We sat there in silence while I processed this. All those times I'd bitten my tongue, all those moments I'd swallowed my concerns, Derek had been using my love for my grandson as a weapon against my daughter. He'd turned me into an accomplice without me even knowing it. What happened yesterday at the party, I finally said, that was different. That was public. He can't hide that. I know. Claire's voice was barely a whisper. When I saw Oliver's face, saw how scared he was, something inside me just broke. I wanted to stop Derek. I wanted to grab Oliver and run. But my body wouldn't move. It was like I was frozen, watching it happen, screaming inside but silent on the outside. You were in survival mode, I said. You'd been trained not to resist. She nodded, then looked at me with fear flooding back into her eyes. Mom, when Derek said you made the biggest mistake of your life, he meant it. He's planning something. I don't know what, but I know that look on his face. He's going to hurt you somehow. Let him try. I said it with more confidence than I felt. I have a lawyer. I have witnesses from yesterday. I have that CPS file. He's not untouchable, Claire. You don't understand. She was gripping my hand so tight now that my fingers were going numb. Derek's father is a judge. His uncle is the police chief in the next county. His college roommate is a prosecutor. He has connections, Mom. Real connections. People who owe him favors. That cold feeling in my stomach was spreading. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying that Derek doesn't make threats he can't back up. If he said he's going to destroy you, he's already figured out how. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Check your email. You need to see this. Robert. I opened my email with trembling hands. Robert had forwarded me something with the subject line, urgent, time-sensitive. It was a legal document. A petition for emergency custody. Derek had already filed it with the court, claiming that I had kidnapped Oliver and was holding him against his will. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the attached affidavit, signed by 3 people I'd never heard of, all claiming they'd witnessed me at yesterday's party behaving erratically and violently. They said I'd been drinking heavily. That I'd screamed at Derek without provocation. That I'd grabbed Oliver so roughly he cried out in pain. None of it was true. Not a single word. But there it was, in black and white sworn statements from people who were at that party. He's lying, Claire said, reading over my shoulder. Those people are Derek's co-workers. They'll say whatever he tells them to say. Can he do this? My voice sounded strange, distant. Can he just lie to a court? He's doing it right now. Claire's face had gone pale. And if his father's judge friends are involved, they might actually grant it. Mom, they could take Oliver today. They could give Derek emergency custody and forbid you from seeing him. The room spun. I thought about Oliver sleeping on my couch, finally peaceful after yesterday's trauma. I thought about handing him back to Derek, watching that light in his eyes die completely. I thought about becoming another person who failed to protect him. No, I said. The word came out stronger than I expected. No. I won't let that happen. But Mom. Call Robert back, I interrupted. Right now. Tell him we need an emergency hearing too. Tell him we have a witness who'll testify about the abuse. Claire went even paler. You mean me? Yes, you. You're Oliver's mother. Your testimony matters more than anyone's. I can't. She was shaking her head frantically. If I testify against Derek, he'll destroy me. He said if I ever betrayed him, he'd make sure I never worked again. He'd tell everyone I was unstable, a bad mother, that I abandoned my son. He's going to do all of that anyway. I grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at me. Don't you see? Derek's already burning everything down. The only question is whether we're going to stand here and let him, or if we're going to fight back. Claire stared at me, tears streaming down her face. For a moment, I saw my little girl again, the one who used to come to me when she was scared, who believed I could fix anything. But she wasn't a little girl anymore. She was a mother herself, facing an impossible choice. If I testify, she whispered, there's no going back. My marriage is over. My life as I know it is over. Your life as you know it is already over, I said gently. Yesterday at that party, it ended. The only question now is what kind of life you're going to build next. She closed her eyes. I could see her warring with herself, weighing 3 years of fear against 1 moment of courage. When she opened them again, something had shifted. Something hardened. Okay, she said. Okay. I'll do it. I'll testify. I pulled her into my arms, and she collapsed against me, sobbing like she hadn't sobbed in years. Maybe she hadn't. Maybe she'd been holding it all in for so long that her body had forgotten how to let go. We stayed like that until my phone rang again. Robert's name on the screen. Margaret, he said without preamble, we have a problem. Derek's emergency hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9. Judge Hotwell is presiding. Is that bad? There was a pause. Judge Hotwell plays golf with Derek's father every Sunday. I've already filed a motion to have him recuse himself, but there's no guarantee it'll be granted before the hearing. My stomach dropped. So what do? We show up and we fight. But Margaret, I need you to understand, this is going to get ugly. Derek's not playing games anymore. He's going for your throat. Then he'd better not miss, I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. Because if I get a chance to fight back, I'm taking it. After I hung up, Claire and I spent the next hour making calls. To Robert's office to prep our case. To the hospital where Claire's regular doctor worked, getting copies of medical records that showed suspicious injuries over the past 3 years. To my neighbor Mrs. Chun, who'd heard Derek yelling at Claire through our shared fence line multiple times. We were building a case. Piece by piece, phone call by phone call, we were gathering ammunition. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake Claire's warning. Derek had connections. He had power. He had people who owed him favors. And he'd had all night to plan his revenge. As the sun started to set, Oliver woke up. He climbed into Claire's lap, rubbing his eyes. Is Daddy coming back? Claire and I exchanged a look. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that his whole world is about to change? That his parents are going to war, and he's the prize they're fighting over? Not tonight, baby, Claire said, kissing his head. Tonight you're staying here with Grandma. Is that okay? Oliver nodded, then looked up at her with those wise, too old eyes. Are you staying too, Mommy? Another look between us. We both knew that if Claire stayed the night, Derek would use it against her. Would claim she'd abandoned the marital home, that she was unstable, that she couldn't be trusted with custody. But we also knew that if she went back to that house alone, there was no guarantee she'd be safe. Claire started, But her phone rang, cutting her off. Derek's name on the screen. Her hand shook as she answered it. Hello? I couldn't hear his words, but I could hear his tone, sharp, angry, demanding. Claire's face went white. When? She asked. Then, I don't understand. What do you mean? Then no. No, that's not, Derek, please just let me explain. He must have hung up because Claire lowered the phone, staring at it like it had turned into a snake. What did he say? I asked. When Claire looked at me, her eyes were filled with terror. He said I have until midnight to come home and apologize. To bring Oliver back and get on my knees and beg for his forgiveness. And if you don't? Her voice was barely audible. He said tomorrow morning, we'll all find out what happens when people betray him. He said by this time tomorrow, I'll be begging him for mercy. She looked down at Oliver, who was watching us with confused, frightened eyes. And then he said, tell your mother I hope she enjoyed her last day with her grandson. Because if I have anything to say about it, it'll be her last. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Outside, the sun had fully set. Darkness was falling. And somewhere across town, Derek was planning something that terrified even his own wife. I looked at Claire, then at Oliver, then back at Claire. You're not going back there tonight. But if I don't? No. I was firm. Whatever he's planning, we face it together. Here. Safe. As a family. Claire nodded, but I could see the fear in her eyes. She didn't believe we were safe. Maybe she was right. That night, I locked every door and window in my house. I kept my phone on the nightstand, Robert's number on speed dial. Claire slept in Oliver's room with him, the two of them curled together like refugees from a war zone. I lay awake in my own bed, listening to the house settle, jumping at every sound. Wondering what tomorrow would bring. Wondering what Derek had planned. Wondering if I'd made the right choice or if I'd just signed all of our death warrants. At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from another unknown number. No words. Just a photo. It was my house. Taken from the street. Taken tonight, just minutes ago based on the timestamp. Someone had been outside, watching us. Taking pictures. My hands shook as I forwarded it to Robert with shaking fingers. His response came back immediately, call 911. Now. But before I could dial, I heard it. The sound that every person fears in the dead of night. The sound that means everything is about to change. Breaking glass. Someone was in my house. I moved fast for a 72-year-old woman. Down the hallway to Oliver's room, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I burst through the door to find Claire already awake, clutching Oliver to her chest. She'd heard it too. Mom, she started, but I pressed a finger to my lips. We listened. Footsteps downstairs. Heavy, deliberate. Not trying to be quiet. Whoever had broken in wanted us to know they were there. Bathroom, I mouthed. Now. We moved silently across the hall. The bathroom was small, but it had a lock on the door and a window that led to the back porch roof. I'd thought about this moment. I'd thought about it a lot over the past 24 hours, though I'd prayed it wouldn't come to this. I locked the bathroom door and pulled out my phone with trembling hands. 911. The call connected. 911, what's your emergency? Someone's broken into my house, I whispered. I'm here with my daughter and grandson. We're locked in the upstairs bathroom. What's your address? I gave it to her while Claire opened the window as quietly as she could. Oliver was silent in her arms, his eyes wide with terror, his small hand covering his own mouth like he'd been taught to be quiet in emergencies. Ma'am, officers are on their way. Can you tell me where the intruder is? Downstairs. I heard glass breaking. Now I stopped. The footsteps were on the stairs now. Coming up. He's coming upstairs. Stay on the line with me. Help is 3 minutes away. 3 minutes. In 3 minutes, we could be dead. The footsteps stopped outside the bathroom door. Then, a voice I recognized. Claire. I know you're in there. Derek. Claire's face went from white to gray. She looked at me with absolute terror in her eyes. Open the door, Derek said. His voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes before violence. We need to talk. The police are on their way, I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. Whatever you think you're doing, Derek, it's over. He laughed. Actually laughed. Over? Margaret, it hasn't even begun. You really thought you could take my son and face no consequences? You really thought you could turn my wife against me? I didn't turn her against you, I shot back. You did that all by yourself. Claire, Derek's voice shifted, became almost gentle. Baby, please. Just open the door. I'm not angry. I just want to talk. I just want my family back. Claire's hand moved toward the lock. I grabbed her wrist, shaking my head frantically. She looked at me, then at the door, torn between fear and some twisted sense of loyalty that 3 years of abuse had drilled into her. Don't, I mouthed. If you don't open this door, Derek continued, I'm going to kick it down. And when I do, things are going to get unpleasant. For everyone. Especially for Oliver. That did it. The threat against Oliver snapped whatever spell Derek had been weaving. Claire's face hardened. She backed away from the door, clutching Oliver tighter. You hear that, dispatch? I said into the phone, making sure my voice was loud enough for Derek to hear. He just threatened a 4-year-old child. That's on record now. There was a long silence. Then Derek's voice came again, colder now. You think you're so smart, Margaret. You think you've thought of everything. But you forgot one crucial detail. What's that? I told you I had connections. Guess who's on duty tonight at the police station? Guess which dispatcher is currently routing your call to the slowest responders in the county? He paused, letting that sink in. Help isn't coming, Margaret. Not in time. My blood ran cold. You're lying. Am I? Let me ask you this. Has the dispatcher told you which officers are responding? Has she given you their names or badge numbers? Has she confirmed that anyone's actually on the way? I looked at my phone. The call timer was still running, but there was no sound from the other end. No dispatcher asking follow-up questions. No sirens in the distance. Just silence. Still there, dispatch? I said into the phone. Nothing. Oh God, Claire whispered. He's telling the truth. Derek's voice came through the door again. Last chance, Claire. Open the door, come home with me like a good wife, and we'll forget this ever happened. Or don't, and face the consequences. Mommy, I'm scared, Oliver whimpered. Claire looked at me, then at the window, then at the locked door. I could see her calculating odds, weighing options, trying to figure out how to save her son. Then we heard something that changed everything. Another voice downstairs. Male, but not Derek's. Police. Is anyone home? Derek swore under his breath. But he didn't move away from the door. That'll be Officer Morrison, he said quietly. My college roommate. He's here to help me retrieve my kidnapped son. Ma'am? The voice came from downstairs again. This is Officer Thomas Morrison with the county police. We got a call about a break-in. Up here. I shouted. Upstairs bathroom. The intruder is outside our door. That's my father-in-law, Derek called down calmly. False alarm, Tom. Just a family dispute. My wife took my son without permission. I came to get him back. Footsteps on the stairs. Then Officer Morrison appeared at the top, a tall man in uniform with Derek's same cold eyes. He looked at Derek, then at our locked bathroom door, and I saw the truth in his expression. He wasn't here to help us. He was here to help Derek. This is a domestic situation, Morrison said, his tone official but his eyes apologue. Retry. A. Continue. Edit. Etic toward Derek. Sir, do you have custody of the child? Joint custody, Derek said smoothly. My wife and her mother took him without my permission. I want him back. That's not what happened. Claire's voice rang out from behind the door. He broke into my mother's house. He threatened us. Morrison looked uncomfortable now. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to open the door. We can sort this all out. Don't open it, Claire, I said firmly. Then to Morrison, Officer, I have video evidence of the break-in. I have text messages of threats. I have witnesses from yesterday who saw this man traumatize a 4-year-old child in public. If you help him right now, you're going to be complicit in whatever happens next. I was bluffing about the video evidence, but Morrison didn't know that. He hesitated, looking between Derek and the door. Tom, Derek said quietly. Remember who got you that job. Remember who put in a good word when you were suspended for. Shut up, Morrison snapped. For the first time, I saw a crack in his loyalty. Just, everyone shut up for a second. In that moment of silence, we heard it. Sirens. Real ones this time, getting closer. Morrison heard them too. His face changed. Those aren't our guys, he said to Derek. What? Derek's calm facade cracked. Who did you call? I didn't call anyone, the dispatch said. The sirens were loud now, right outside. Car doors slamming. Multiple voices shouting. Someone pounding on the front door. Police. Open up. Derek's face went from confident to panicked in seconds. Tom, you need to fix this. Right now. But Morrison was already backing away, hands up. I'm not going down for this, Derek. I'm not losing my badge because you couldn't keep your family in line. You coward. Derek lunged for him, but Morrison was faster. He headed downstairs, leaving Derek alone outside our bathroom door. The pounding downstairs got louder. This is Sergeant Patricia Hayes with the state police. We have a warrant. Open this door or we're coming through. State police. Not county. Robert must have called them when I sent him that photo. They were outside Derek's jurisdiction, outside his father's influence. Derek realized it too. I heard him swear, heard his footsteps moving fast down the hallway. A crash. He was trying to escape through one of the bedrooms. Stay here, I told Claire and Oliver. Then, against every instinct telling me to hide, I unlocked the bathroom door. The hallway was empty. I could hear chaos downstairs, the front door being forced open, officers shouting commands, Derek yelling something about his rights. I moved to my bedroom where the back window was open, curtains blowing in the night breeze. Derek was halfway out the window, trying to climb onto the porch roof, when I spoke. Running makes you look guilty. He froze, then turned to look at me. In the dim light from the street lamps outside, his face was a mask of rage. This isn't over, Margaret. You think the state police scare me? You think you've won? I will destroy you. I will take everything from you. Your grandson, your daughter, your house, your reputation. Everything. You already tried that, I said quietly. And here I am. Still standing. For a moment, I thought he might actually climb back inside and come at me. But then we heard boots on the stairs, and Derek's expression shifted to something almost like fear. He looked at me one last time, and I saw in his eyes what I'd suspected all along. Derek was a coward. He was only brave when he had power, when he faced someone weaker than him. Faced with real consequences, real authority, he was nothing but a scared little man. Derek Thompson, you need to come inside right now. Sergeant Hayes's voice boomed from the hallway. Make this easy on yourself. Derek looked down at the 2-story drop below the window, then back at me. He was trapped, and he knew it. I didn't break in, he said suddenly, his voice shifting to something almost pitiful. The door was unlocked. I was just trying to talk to my wife. This is all a misunderstanding. The back window was locked, I said. I checked it myself. You broke the glass on my kitchen door. There's evidence, Derek. Physical evidence that not even your father's judge friends can make disappear. Sergeant Hayes appeared in the doorway, a tall black woman with steel in her eyes and her hand on her weapon. Sir, step away from the window. Hands where I can see them. Derek complied, his shoulders slumping in defeat. As Hayes cuffed him and read him his rights, he looked at me one more time. Claire will never testify against me. She loves me. She'll choose me. No, I said. She won't. Because love doesn't look like what you gave her. What you gave her was terror dressed up as devotion. And she's finally learned the difference. They led him away. I heard him being taken down the stairs, still protesting, still making excuses. The house filled with officers, real ones this time, taking statements, photographing the broken door, collecting evidence. I went back to the bathroom. Claire and Oliver were still huddled together on the floor. When Claire saw me, she burst into tears. Is he gone? He's gone, I confirmed. They arrested him. He's going to jail, at least for tonight. Claire collapsed against me, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Oliver wiggled free and wrapped his arms around both of us. We're safe now, Mommy. Grandma saved us. But I knew better. We weren't safe yet. This was just the beginning. Derek would make bail. He'd lawyer up. He'd use every connection, every favor, every dirty trick he could think of to fight back. The real battle was still coming. Sergeant Hayes came to find us 20 minutes later. Mrs. Wilson? I need to take your statement. We went downstairs. The house looked like a crime scene because it was one. Broken glass on the kitchen floor, muddy boot prints through the living room, Derek's fingerprints being lifted from the bathroom door. Officers were taking photos of everything. I told Hayes the whole story. Not just about tonight, but about the past 3 years. Claire sat beside me, adding details I'd never known. The times Derek had locked her in the bedroom during arguments. The times he'd withheld money, claiming she was irresponsible with finances. The time he'd grabbed Oliver hard enough to leave bruises, then threatened to call CPS himself if Claire told anyone, claiming she'd done it. Why didn't you report any of this before? Hayes asked, not unkindly. Claire's voice was small. Because I was scared. Because he convinced me that no one would believe me. Because he said he had friends in the police department, and they'd take his side. She glanced at Hayes. Was he lying about that? About having someone delay our 911 call? Hayes's face darkened. We're looking into that. If Officer Morrison or anyone in dispatch interfered with your emergency call, they'll face charges. I promise you that. As the sun came up, painting my destroyed kitchen in shades of gold and pink, the full weight of what had happened settled over me. Derek had actually broken into my home. Had threatened us. Had tried to use his connections to get away with it. And if not for Robert's quick thinking in calling the state police directly, he might have succeeded. At 7 a.m., Robert arrived. He looked like he hadn't slept either. I've been on the phone with the prosecutor's office all night. Derek's been charged with breaking and entering, criminal trespass, and making terroristic threats. The judge set bail at $50,000. He'll make that easily, Claire said dully. His father will pay it. Probably, Robert agreed. But here's the thing, your emergency custody hearing is still scheduled for this morning. And now we have Derek on record threatening his own child. We have police reports. We have witnesses. We have him dead to rights. What about Judge Hartwell? I asked. Won't he still rule in Derek's favor? Robert's smile was grim. Judge Hartwell recused himself an hour ago. Apparently, when the state police started asking questions about possible corruption in the local court system, he decided it was better to step away than face an investigation. Your case is being heard by Judge Sandra Morrison instead. Morrison. Claire looked panicked. Like Officer Morrison? No relation, Robert assured her. Sandra Morrison is from the next county over, brought in specifically because of the conflict of interest concerns. She's got a reputation for being tough but fair. This is the best-case scenario for us. The hearing was at 9. We barely had time to shower and change before heading to the courthouse. Oliver stayed with Mrs. Chun, who'd come over immediately when she heard what happened. You go fight for that baby, she told me, hugging me tight. I'll keep him safe. The courtroom was cold and impersonal, all wood paneling and fluorescent lights. Derek was already there with his lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit who looked like he charged by the minute. Derek's father sat in the back row, glaring at us with undisguised hatred. Derek himself looked different. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a carefully constructed mask of wounded innocence. He'd changed into a nice suit, had cleaned himself up. When Claire walked in, he looked at her with such manufactured sadness that I wanted to vomit. Judge Morrison entered, and we all stood. She was a woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back severely and eyes that missed nothing. She looked at Derek, then at Claire, then at me, and I could tell she'd already read every police report, every file document, every piece of evidence. This is an emergency hearing regarding custody of Oliver James Thompson, age 4, she began. Mr. Thompson has petitioned for immediate full custody, claiming the child is in danger. Mrs. Wilson and Mrs. Thompson have counterfiled, claiming Mr. Thompson is a danger to the child. Let's hear from Mr. Thompson's counsel first. Derek's lawyer stood, smooth as silk. Your Honor, my client is a devoted father who's been systematically alienated from his son by his mother-in-law. Last night's incident was a desperate attempt by a father to see his child after he was illegally removed from the home. My client admits he made an error in judgment, but his intentions were pure. He simply wanted to talk to his wife, to see his son, to repair his family. It was a masterful spin, making Derek sound like the victim, like we were the unreasonable ones. I could see the judge taking notes, her expression neutral. Then it was Robert's turn. He stood slowly, and when he spoke, his voice was steel. Your Honor, Mr. Thompson didn't come to talk last night. He came to terrorize. He broke into Mrs. Wilson's home through a locked door. He threatened to harm a 4-year-old child if his demands weren't met. He attempted to use his connections in the police department to delay response to a 911 call. These aren't the actions of a devoted father. These are the actions of an abuser who's losing control. Robert presented everything. Photos of the broken door. The text messages with threats. Statements from witnesses at the birthday party who'd seen Oliver's terror. The CPS report from last year. Medical records showing Claire's suspicious injuries. Mrs. Chen's testimony about hearing Derek scream at his family through the fence. And then, Robert called Claire to the stand. She walked to the witness box like she was walking to her own execution. When she sat down and put her hand on the Bible, I could see her trembling. Derek leaned forward in his chair, his eyes boring into her, willing her to stay silent. Mrs. Thompson, Robert began gently, I need you to tell Judge Morrison the truth about your marriage. Can you do that? Claire looked at Derek. Looked at me. Looked at the judge. And then, in a voice that started quiet but grew stronger with every word, she told the truth. She told about the verbal abuse that started on their honeymoon. The first time Derek shoved her into a wall. The escalating violence that she'd hidden from everyone, including herself. The times Oliver had witnessed his father's rage. The fear that had become their family's daily bread. Did you want to leave? Robert asked. Yes, Claire whispered. So many times. But Derek said if I ever tried, he'd take Oliver away from me. He said he had friends who would make sure I was declared an unfit mother. He said I'd never see my son again. And did you believe him? Yes. Because everything else he'd ever threatened had come true. So yes, I believed him. Derek's lawyer tried to destroy her on cross-examination, painted her as a bitter, vindictive wife trying to smear her husband's good name. But Claire didn't break. Every question he asked, she answered with simple, devastating truth. When it was over, Judge Morrison sat back in her chair and looked at both sides. The courtroom was silent, waiting. I've heard enough, she said. Mr. Thompson, I'm denying your petition for custody. Furthermore, I'm granting Mrs. Wilson temporary guardianship of Oliver Thompson while this matter is further investigated. You are to have no contact with the child or with Mrs. Thompson except through attorneys and supervised visits arranged by the court. Derek shot to his feet. You can't do this. He's my son. Sit down, Mr. Thompson, Judge Morrison said sharply. You're lucky I'm not adding contempt of court to your current charges. Your behavior last night demonstrated that you're a threat to your family. Until you can prove otherwise, you will not be alone with that child. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down. Derek's face went purple with rage. His father started yelling from the back row about corruption and bias. But it was over. We'd won. At least for now. Claire collapsed in my arms in the hallway outside the courtroom, sobbing with relief. We did it, she kept saying. We actually did it. But as we walked to the car, I saw Derek watching us from the courthouse steps. The call came at 2:17 a.m. Claire's voice on the other end was so panicked I could barely understand her. Mom, you need to come to the hospital. Now. My blood turned to ice. Is it Oliver? Is he hurt? No, it's Derek. Mom, they found him. Her voice dissolved into sobs. I was in the car within minutes, still in my nightgown with a coat thrown over it, my hand shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. The 20-minute drive to County General felt like hours. My mind raced through terrible possibilities. Had Derek hurt himself? Had he hurt someone else? Was this some kind of trick? Claire was in the ER waiting room, pacing like a caged animal. When she saw me, she grabbed my arms. They found him unconscious in his apartment. His neighbor heard him fall and called 911. "Mom, they're saying it might be," she choked on the words. "They're saying it might be poison." The world tilted. What? The doctors don't know what yet. But he's in critical condition. His organs are failing. They're doing tests, but she looked at me with eyes full of terror and something else. Something that looked like accusation. "Mom, where were you tonight?" The question hit me like a slap. What? I was home. I was asleep. Why would you? And then I understood. You think I did this? No. The police are going to ask. Derek's father is here, and he's already making accusations. He's saying she couldn't finish. I heard him before I saw him. James Thompson, Derek's father, storming down the hallway with 2 uniformed officers in tow. His face was twisted with grief and rage. "There she is." He pointed at me like I was a criminal. "That's her. That's the woman who poisoned my son." "Mr. Thompson, calm down," one of the officers said. "Calm down? My son is dying because of her. She did this. She threatened him, took his child, and when the courts didn't give her what she wanted, she poisoned him." He turned to the officers. "Arrest her. Do your jobs." The officers looked uncomfortable. The younger one, a woman with kind eyes, stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Diaz. I need to ask you a few questions." "I didn't do anything," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I was home all night. I can prove it." "Can you?" James Thompson sneered. "Or are you going to tell them you have an alibi that conveniently can't be verified?" "Actually," a new voice said from behind them, "she does have an alibi." We all turned. Robert was walking toward us, and he wasn't alone. Behind him was a man I'd never seen before, carrying a laptop. "This is Marcus Chun, Mrs. Wilson's neighbor's son," Robert explained. "He's a security consultant. Tell them what you told me, Marcus." Marcus opened his laptop, turning it so the officers could see. "Mrs. Wilson's neighbor, my mother, installed security cameras last month after there was a break-in 2 houses down. One of those cameras has a clear view of Mrs. Wilson's front door and driveway. She didn't leave her house all night. Her car never moved." He played the footage. There was my house, in night vision green, completely still from 10 p.m. until Marcus had stopped the recording at 2 a.m. No one coming or going. No car leaving. Officer Diaz looked at the timestamp, then at me. "Do you have cameras on your back door as well?" "No," I admitted. "But I can show you my phone's location history. It never left my address." "That doesn't prove anything." James Thompson was practically foaming at the mouth. "She could have hired someone. She could have." "Mr. Thompson," Robert interrupted firmly, "making false accusations is a serious matter. My client has a solid alibi. Unless you have actual evidence, I suggest you focus on your son's recovery instead of throwing around baseless allegations." "Baseless?" James turned to Claire. Tell them what your mother's been saying about my son. Tell them how she threatened to make him pay." Claire looked horrified. I never said." "You told me yourself that she took Oliver and said she'd never let Derek see him again. That sounds like a threat to me." "I said I wouldn't let him be hurt anymore," I said clearly, looking James Thompson in the eye. "That's not a threat. That's protection. And yes, I wanted Derek to face consequences for what he did. Legal consequences. Through the courts. Not," I gestured helplessly toward the ER, "whatever this is." A doctor emerged from the treatment area, her face grim. "Mr. Thompson? Your son is stable for now, but we need to talk about what we've found." James rushed to her side. "What is it? What did she use on him?" The doctor looked confused. "She? Sir, I'm not sure what you mean. Your son has acute liver failure. We ran a full toxicology panel. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Mr. Thompson, has your son been drinking heavily? What? No. He has a beer now and then, but... Sir, the levels of acetaminophen in his system combined with alcohol suggest either a severe overdose or chronic misuse. We found an empty bottle of pain medication in his apartment, along with empty alcohol containers. This appears to be, she stopped, clearly uncomfortable. We need to consider the possibility that this was self-inflicted. The silence that followed was deafening. You're saying Derek poisoned himself? Claire's voice was barely a whisper. I'm saying the evidence suggests your husband consumed a dangerous amount of pain medication mixed with alcohol. Whether that was intentional or accidental, we can't say. But there's no indication of external poisoning or foul play. James Thompson's face had gone from red to white. No, that's not possible. Derek wouldn't, he would never. But I saw the doubt creeping into his eyes. The terrible realization that maybe his son had done this to himself. Maybe the perfect image he'd built of Derek was a lie. Can we see him? Claire asked. The doctor hesitated. He's unconscious. We have him on dialysis to try to save his liver, but the next 48 hours are critical. Only immediate family. She's his wife, I said, putting my arm around Claire. She should be with him. We followed the doctor into the ICU. Derek lay in the bed, tubes and wires everywhere, machines beeping rhythmically. Without his swagger, without his cruel smile, he looked small. Broken. Claire stood by his bedside, staring down at him. I couldn't read her expression. Was it grief? Relief? A terrible mixture of both? Why would he do this? She whispered. Was it because of the hearing? Because he lost? Or, I said quietly, maybe it was because for the first time in his life, he had to face real consequences. Men like Derek, they can't handle losing. They can't handle being exposed for what they really are. The hours crawled by. Claire refused to leave Derek's side, even though he couldn't see her, couldn't hear her. I tried to convince her to go home, to rest, but she wouldn't budge. I need to be here, she said. Not for him. For me. I need to watch him like this, powerless, vulnerable, so I can remember that he's not invincible. That he's just a man who made terrible choices. As dawn broke, Robert pulled me aside. The police want a formal statement from you. Just routine, given Thompson's accusations. But Margaret, he lowered his voice. There's something else. Derek's apartment was searched as part of the investigation. They found journals. Detailed journals about Claire, about Oliver, about you. Plans for revenge. It's disturbing. What kind of plans? The kind that prove you were right to be afraid. The kind that show if he'd gotten the chance, he would have done something much worse than break into your house. Robert's face was grave. That hearing yesterday might have saved all your lives. Because Derek was escalating, and he wasn't going to stop. I thought about that as I watched Claire sit vigil by her husband's bedside. The man who'd tormented her for 3 years was now fighting for his life. And the terrible question hung in the air, did we save him only to have him come back and finish what he'd started? By noon, Derek's condition had stabilized slightly. The doctors said if he survived the next 24 hours, he might pull through. But his liver was severely damaged. He'd need years of recovery, if he recovered at all. Claire finally left the hospital room and found me in the waiting area. She looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. He's going to live, she said. It wasn't quite relief in her voice. It was something more complex. The doctor says he'll probably make it. How do you feel about that? I asked carefully. She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Part of me is glad because I don't want Oliver to grow up knowing his father died. But another part of me is terrified because if he lives, he'll come back. He'll fight for custody. He'll make our lives hell all over again. Not if we don't let him, I said. Claire, Derek is going to be weak for a long time. And while he's weak, we're going to be strong. We're going to build a case so solid that no judge in any county will give him unsupervised access to Oliver. We're going to make sure that by the time Derek can fight back, it'll be too late. She looked at me, and I saw something new in her eyes. Not fear. Not doubt. But determination. Mom, she said quietly, I need to tell you something. Something I haven't told anyone. My heart sank. What is it? Last week, before the birthday party, Derek told me he was going to take Oliver and disappear. He said he'd had enough of my disrespect, enough of your interference. He said he was going to take our son to another state where no one knew us, and I'd never see him again. Her voice shook. That's why I didn't stop him at the party when he shaved Oliver's head. Because I was terrified that if I crossed him one more time, he'd make good on that threat. Oh, Claire. So when you took Oliver and left, I was furious at you but also relieved. Because you did what I couldn't. You protected him when I was too scared to. Tears were streaming down her face now. And last night when Derek ended up here, my first thought wasn't oh no, my husband is hurt. It was thank God. Thank God he can't take my son now. She looked at me with shame and relief warring in her expression. What does that make me, Mom? What kind of person is glad her husband is dying? The kind who's been abused for so long that she's forgotten what normal feels like, I said, pulling her into my arms. You're not a bad person, Claire. You're a survivor. And survivors do what they have to do to protect themselves and their children. We held each other in that hospital waiting room while the machines beeped and life went on around us. This wasn't how I'd imagined justice would look. I'd thought there would be a clean ending, a trial, a conviction, Derek behind bars where he couldn't hurt anyone. Instead, there was this messy, complicated reality where the villain nearly destroyed himself, and we were left picking up the pieces. Mrs. Thompson? A nurse approached us. Your husband is asking for you. Claire's face went white. He's awake. Just barely. But he's requesting you specifically. You don't have to go in if you're not comfortable. I'll go, Claire said. She looked at me. Will you come with me? We walked back into that ICU room together. Derek's eyes were open now, though barely. When he saw Claire, he tried to speak, but his throat was too raw from the breathing tube. Claire moved closer, bending down to hear him. I stayed by the door, ready to pull her away if needed. I'm sorry, Derek rasped. I'm so sorry. Claire stared at him. Sorry for what, Derek? For hitting me? For terrorizing our son? For breaking into my mother's house? Which thing are you sorry for? Everything. Tears leaked from the corners of his eyes. I'm sorry for everything. I don't know who I became. I don't know how I turned into that person. Yes, you do, Claire said, her voice hard. You knew exactly what you were doing. Every time you hurt me, every time you scared Oliver, you knew. You just didn't care. I need help, Derek whispered. I know that now. I need therapy. I need to fix what's broken inside me. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised us both. Then fix it, Derek. Get help. Become a better person. But do it for yourself, not for us. Because we're done. Oliver and I are done being your victims. She straightened, and I saw my daughter, the strong, independent woman I'd raised, finally standing in her full power. If you survive this, Claire continued, if you get better, then maybe someday Oliver can have a relationship with you. A supervised, limited relationship with a version of you that's actually safe. But me? I'm filing for divorce. And I'm getting full custody. And you're not going to fight me on it. Claire. No. You're not going to fight me on it because if you do, I'll tell the court everything. Every bruise, every threat, every terrifying moment from the past 3 years. And then I'll tell them about your plans to kidnap Oliver. Robert found your journals, Derek. We know what you were planning. Derek's face crumpled. Please. Please don't take my son. You took him from yourself, Claire said. The moment you chose violence over love, you lost him. You lost both of us. She turned and walked out. I followed her, leaving Derek to his tears and his machines and the wreckage of the life he'd built on fear. In the hallway, Claire collapsed against the wall, shaking. But this time, she wasn't crying. She was laughing. A wild, free sound that I hadn't heard from her in years. I did it, she said. I actually told him. I stood up to him. You did, I agreed, pride swelling in my chest. You were magnificent. Mom, she said, suddenly serious, promise me something. Promise me that no matter what happens, if Derek recovers, if he tries to come back, if his father keeps making accusations, promise me we won't back down. Promise me we'll keep fighting. I took her hands in mine. I promise. We fight until Oliver is safe. We fight until you're free. We fight until justice is done. Even if justice looks different than we expected? I thought about Derek lying in that hospital bed, broken by his own hand. About the quiet way karma sometimes works. About how sometimes the worst punishment for a bully is simply losing their power. Especially then, I said. 3 days later, Derek was stable enough to be moved out of the ICU. The doctors said he'd survive, but his liver damage was permanent. He'd need medication and monitoring for the rest of his life. He'd never be as strong as he'd been. The police investigation concluded what the doctors had suspected. Derek had overdosed himself, whether intentionally or accidentally, they couldn't say. No charges were filed against anyone else. James Thompson's accusations were officially dismissed. Claire filed for divorce the next day. Derek didn't contest it. Maybe he knew he couldn't win. Maybe he was too weak to fight. Or maybe, somewhere in that hospital bed, facing his own mortality, he'd finally realized what he'd lost. The custody hearing was postponed until Derek recovered enough to attend. Robert said it was just a formality at this point. Given everything that had happened, no judge would give Derek anything more than supervised visitation. Oliver stayed with me and Claire in my house while we figured out next steps. Slowly, day by day, that scared little boy began to reappear. His laugh came back first, then his endless questions, then his bouncing, joyful energy. His hair was growing back in soft curls that Claire kissed every night before bed. He's healing, she told me one evening as we watched Oliver play in the yard. We both are. What will you do now? I asked. I applied to get my teaching license reinstated. I'm going back to work in the fall. And I'm looking at apartments, nothing fancy, but something that's ours. Mine and Oliver's. She smiled. A fresh start. You could stay here, I offered. I know. But I need to prove to myself that I can do this. That I can stand on my own 2 feet. She squeezed my hand. You saved us, Mom. But now I need to save myself. I understood. She needed to rebuild her life, her identity, everything Derek had tried to destroy. And she needed to do it herself. A month after that terrible night in the hospital, I got a letter. It was from Derek. Margaret, I know you have every reason to hate me. I've given you plenty of reasons. But I wanted you to know that I'm in a rehabilitation facility now, working on my addictions and my anger issues. It doesn't excuse what I did. Nothing can excuse that. But I'm trying to become someone different. Someone better. I know I've lost Claire. I know I'll probably never have a real relationship with Oliver. I accept that. These are the consequences of my actions. But I wanted you to know that your grandson is safe from me. I will never hurt him again. I will never hurt Claire again. I'm signing whatever custody agreement they want. I'm not going to fight anymore. You were right about me from the beginning. I wish I'd been smart enough to prove you wrong. Derek. I read the letter 3 times, looking for manipulation, for hidden threats. But all I found was defeat. Maybe genuine remorse. Or maybe just the broken words of a man who'd finally lost everything. I never responded to that letter. But I kept it, tucked away in a drawer, a reminder that sometimes justice is quiet. Sometimes karma works slowly, dismantling a tyrant one piece at a time until there's nothing left but a shell of a man writing apology letters that can never undo the damage done. The final custody hearing was 6 months after the birthday party that started it all. Derek attended via video call from his facility. He looked thin gray, nothing like the arrogant man who'd once terrorized his family. When the judge asked if he contested Claire's petition for full custody with supervised visitation, he simply said, "No, Your Honor. I agree to all terms." Just like that, it was over. We walked out of that courthouse into brilliant sunshine. Oliver was holding Claire's hand on one side and mine on the other. He didn't understand everything that had happened. He was only 4, still too young for the full truth. But he understood enough. He understood that he was safe now. That Daddy couldn't hurt Mommy anymore. That Grandma's house was a place of refuge, not fear. Grandma, he said, looking up at me with those wise eyes, when I grow up, I'm gonna protect people like you protected me. My heart broke and healed at the same time. You're going to make a difference in this world, sweetheart. I can already tell. That night, after Oliver was asleep and Claire had gone back to her new apartment, I sat alone in my quiet house and thought about everything that had happened. About the grandmother I'd been, careful, quiet, afraid to make waves, and the grandmother I'd become, fierce, uncompromising, willing to burn everything down to protect the people I loved. Sometimes being dramatic is exactly what the world needs. Sometimes making a scene is the only way to save someone. Sometimes quiet justice isn't quiet at all, it's loud and messy and brave. And sometimes, the greatest thing you can teach the next generation is that love isn't about keeping the peace. It's about fighting for what's right, even when you're terrified. Even when the whole world tells you to sit down and be quiet. Even when you're a 72-year-old woman with nothing but love and stubbornness on your side. I thought the hard part was over. I really did. We had the custody order. Derek was in rehab. Claire was rebuilding her life. Oliver was healing. I should have known better than to believe in happy endings. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 3 months after the final hearing. Robert's voice was tight with urgency. Margaret, we have a problem. Derek's father filed an appeal. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. He what? James Thompson is claiming the custody ruling was made under duress, that Derek wasn't mentally competent to agree to the terms because of his medical condition. He's petitioning for Derek to get another hearing. And Margaret, Robert paused. He's also filed a civil suit against you for emotional distress and alienation of affection. The words didn't make sense at first. Alienation of affection? That's not even. It's a long shot, and it probably won't go anywhere, but it's going to tie us up in court for months. Maybe longer. And the appeal on the custody order means everything's in limbo again. The supervised visitation that was supposed to start next month is now on hold. I sat down heavily. Can he do this? Can he just keep dragging us back to court over and over? Unfortunately, yes. As long as he has money for lawyers, he can keep filing. It's a war of attrition, Margaret. He's trying to exhaust you. Break you down until you give up. But I hadn't survived 72 years on this earth by giving up when things got hard. Then we fight. Again. As many times as it takes. After I hung up with Robert, I had to tell Claire. She took it better than I expected, or maybe she just learned to expect the worst. Of course he did, she said flatly. Of course James wouldn't let this go. He's just like his son. They both think they own people. We'll beat this, I promised. Will we? Claire's eyes were tired. Or are we just going to spend the rest of our lives in courtrooms, fighting the same battles over and over? Maybe we should just. Don't, I interrupted. Don't even think about giving in. That's what they want. They want you exhausted and hopeless, so you'll agree to whatever they demand. But what if I am exhausted, Mom? What if I'm so tired of fighting that I can't do this anymore? I understood. God, I understood. But I also knew that the moment we stopped fighting was the moment we lost everything we'd gained. Then you rest, I said gently. You rest, and I'll fight for you. That's what grandmothers do. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and document preparation. James Thompson's lawyers were ruthless, digging into every aspect of our lives. They questioned my fitness as a guardian, suggesting I was too old, too unstable. They painted Claire as a vindictive ex-wife who'd manipulated her sick husband into signing away his rights. They even tried to claim that Oliver's kidnapping had traumatized Derek so badly that it caused his overdose. It was nauseating. But we had truth on our side, and sometimes truth is enough. The appeal hearing was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, life had to go on. Claire started her new teaching job, 2nd grade, a class full of bright-eyed kids who thought she hung the moon. Oliver started preschool, where he made friends and brought home drawings of superheroes that looked suspiciously like his mother. And I became a fixture at the local coffee shop where I met with Robert 3 times a week, going over strategy, preparing for every possible argument James Thompson's lawyers could throw at us. One afternoon, a woman approached me while I was reviewing documents. She was in her 50s, well-dressed, with kind eyes and a nervous energy. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Margaret Wilson?" I looked up, immediately wary. "Who's asking?" "My name is Patricia Morrison. I'm Tom Morrison's wife, the officer who was at your house that night with Derek." My guard went up instantly. "If you're here to—" "I'm here to apologize," she interrupted. "And to help, if you'll let me." I gestured to the empty chair across from me. She sat, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "Tom told me everything that happened that night. How Derek called in a favor, how Tom almost helped him instead of doing the right thing. He's been eaten up with guilt ever since." "Good," I said coldly. "He should be." "You're right. He should be. But what you don't know is that Tom came forward 2 weeks ago. He went to Internal Affairs and told them everything. About Derek's connections in the department, about the favors that were called in, about the dispatcher who delayed your 911 call." She leaned forward. "Tom's testifying at a grand jury hearing next week. Derek's father is being investigated for corruption. It's all coming down, Mrs. Wilson." I stared at her, not quite believing what I was hearing. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Tom said that night changed him. Seeing what you did for your grandson, how you stood up to Derek even when you were terrified, it made him realize he'd been on the wrong side. He wants to make it right." Patricia pulled a thick envelope from her purse. "These are copies of internal documents. Communications between James Thompson and various people in the police department and court system. Tom shouldn't have copies of these, and I definitely shouldn't be giving them to you, but," she pushed the envelope across the table. "Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules." I took the envelope with shaking hands. "Why would Officer Morrison risk his career for us?" "Because he has a daughter Oliver's age. And that night, watching Derek terrorize that little boy, Tom saw his own daughter. He realized if he didn't stand up for what was right, he was just as guilty as Derek." Patricia stood to leave. "My husband made a mistake. He's trying to fix it. I hope these help." After she left, I opened the envelope. Inside were emails, text messages, phone records, a paper trail showing exactly how deep James Thompson's corruption went. How he'd pulled strings to get Derek preferential treatment. How he'd pressured judges and police officers. How he'd used his position to protect his son from consequences time and time again. It was everything we needed. And it had fallen into my lap like a gift from God. I called Robert immediately. We just got our smoking gun. The appeals hearing was nothing like I expected. When we arrived at the courthouse, there were news cameras outside. Somehow word had leaked about the corruption investigation, and now James Thompson was the one under scrutiny instead of us. Inside, James sat alone on his side of the courtroom. No army of lawyers this time. No smug confidence. He looked like a man watching his empire crumble. When Judge Morrison entered, the same judge who'd ruled in our favor before, she didn't look happy. "I've reviewed the appeal and the new evidence that's been submitted. Mr. Thompson, your filing suggests that the previous ruling was made under improper circumstances. Would you like to address that?" James stood slowly. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked old. Defeated. "Your Honor, I'd like to withdraw the appeal." The courtroom went silent. Even his own lawyer looked shocked. "You're withdrawing?" Judge Morrison repeated. "Yes." James's voice cracked. "I've been made aware of certain facts that I didn't know before. My son's condition, the extent of his actions, I was in denial. I wanted to believe he was the victim. But I was wrong." He looked directly at Claire. "Mrs. Thompson, I apologize. To you and to your mother. My son hurt you, and instead of holding him accountable, I enabled him. I'm sorry." Claire's hand found mine under the table and squeezed. Hard. Judge Morrison studied James for a long moment. "Mr. Thompson, I'm not sure if you're withdrawing because you've had a change of heart or because you know the corruption investigation is going to expose things you'd rather keep hidden. But either way, I'm accepting your withdrawal. The original custody order stands. This matter is closed." The gavel came down, and it was finally truly over. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Claire and I pushed through them without comment, but I heard their questions following us. "Mrs. Wilson, how does it feel to win?" Mrs. Thompson, will you comment on the corruption charges? Is it true Derek Thompson attempted to bribe officials? We didn't answer. We just got in the car and drove away, leaving the circus behind. I can't believe he withdrew, Claire said as we pulled onto the highway. Just like that. After everything. He didn't have a choice, I explained. Those documents Patricia gave us showed he'd committed multiple felonies. Withdrawing the appeal was his only option to avoid criminal charges himself. So we won because he's a criminal? No, I corrected. We won because we told the truth and refused to back down. His corruption was just the cherry on top. Claire laughed, a real laugh that I hadn't heard in years. We actually did it, Mom. We actually won. We did, I agreed. But I knew it wasn't quite over. Not yet. That night, after Oliver was asleep and Claire had gone home, I found myself staring at my phone. There was something I needed to do. Something I'd been putting off for months. I pulled up Derek's number, the one he'd texted threats from all those months ago, and I typed out a message, "It's over. James withdrew the appeal. The custody order stands. I hope you're getting the help you need. Not for Claire or for me, but for yourself. And someday when Oliver asks about you, I hope I can tell him you became someone worth knowing." I stared at that message for 10 minutes before I hit send. Part of me wanted to leave it unsaid, to let Derek disappear into his consequences without a word from me. But another part, the part that had raised a daughter and now helped raise a grandson, knew that healing required closure. Not forgiveness necessarily, but acknowledgement that the story was ending. Derek's response came 3 hours later. "Thank you. I don't deserve your kindness, but thank you. Tell Oliver I'm sorry. Tell him his daddy is trying to be better. Maybe someday I can show him instead of just saying it." I didn't respond. Some conversations don't need continuing. They just need to end with both sides knowing where they stand. 2 weeks later, Claire invited me to her classroom's family day. I watched her with her students, patient, encouraging, full of light, and I barely recognized her as the same woman who'd been so broken just months before. She'd found herself again. Or maybe she'd found a new version of herself, one forged in fire and stronger for it. Oliver ran up to me during recess, his hair now a mass of bouncing curls again, his eyes bright and fearless. "Grandma, watch me on the monkey bars." I watched him climb and swing, laughing with his friends, completely free. This was what we'd fought for. Not courtrooms or legal victories, but this moment right here. A child who could play without fear. A mother who could teach without looking over her shoulder. A family that had survived and come out stronger. As I watched Oliver play, a woman sat down beside me on the bench. She was young, maybe 30, with a black eye poorly covered with makeup. She was watching a little girl on the swings with an expression I recognized, love mixed with fear. "That's my daughter Emma," she said quietly. "She's 5. I didn't say anything. Just waited. "I saw you on the news," she continued. "The story about your grandson and the custody fight. About how you stood up to your son-in-law." She turned to look at me, and I saw tears in her eyes. "How did you do it? How did you find the courage?" I thought about that question. About the night I'd grabbed Oliver and walked out of that party. About facing Derek at my door. About all the moments where I could have backed down but didn't. I didn't feel courageous, I told her honestly. I felt terrified. But I had something more important than courage. I had a reason. That little boy needed me to be brave even when I was scared. So I was. The woman nodded slowly. "My husband says if I ever try to leave, he'll kill me. He says no one will help me, that I'm trapped." "You're not trapped," I said firmly. "You feel trapped, and that's different. There are people who will help you. Organizations, lawyers, shelters. You just have to take the first step." "What if I can't?" Her voice broke. "What if I'm too scared?" I reached into my purse and pulled out a business card, Robert's contact information. "Then start by making a phone call. Just one call. That's all. The rest will follow." She took the card with shaking hands and tucked it into her pocket. We sat in silence for a few more minutes, watching our grandchildren and daughters play, two women who understood what it meant to survive. "Thank you," she whispered, then stood and walked away. I never saw her again. But 2 months later, Robert called to tell me that a woman had reached out to him using my name as a reference. She was filing for divorce and seeking a protective order against her abusive husband. She was taking that first step. And I realized something sitting on that playground bench. This story wasn't just about saving Oliver. It was about showing other people that saving themselves was possible. That you're never too small, too old, or too powerless to fight back. That sometimes one act of courage can ripple out and change lives you'll never know about. Claire came to find me as family day was ending. Ready to go? Actually, I said, I was thinking. What if we started a support group? For people trying to leave abusive situations. We have experience now. We could help others. Claire's face lit up. That's a wonderful idea. We could meet at the community center, maybe once a week. And we could get Robert to volunteer legal advice, I added. And Patricia Morrison, Officer Morrison's wife, she might know other people who want to help. We talked all the way home about plans and possibilities, building something good from the ashes of something terrible. That's what survivors do. We don't just escape, we turn around and help the next person find their way out. That night, I had a dream. I was back at Derek's birthday party, watching those clippers tear through Oliver's hair. But this time, when I lifted him from that chair, I didn't walk away alone. Behind me was a line of women, hundreds of them, thousands, all following me out of that backyard, carrying their own children, their own pain, their own courage. I woke up with tears on my face and hope in my heart. The next chapter of our story was just beginning. And this time, we weren't just surviving. We were thriving. We were building something bigger than ourselves. We were creating change. But there was one more thing I needed to do first. One more piece of unfinished business that would determine whether we could truly move forward or if the past would keep pulling us back. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Not from Derek this time, but from the rehabilitation facility where he was staying. The director wanted to meet with Claire and me. Derek had made a request, and she thought we should hear him out. Claire's first instinct was to refuse. I don't want to see him, Mom. I don't want to hear whatever excuse or manipulation he's cooked up now. Then don't, I said simply. You don't owe him anything. But, I hesitated. Maybe we should find out what he wants. Knowledge is power, honey. If we know what he's planning, we can prepare for it. So we went. The facility was 2 hours away, tucked into the mountains, the kind of place that cost more per month than most people made in a year. James Thompson might have withdrawn his appeal, but he was still funding his son's recovery. The director, Dr. Sarah Chun, met us in her office. She was younger than I expected, with calm eyes and a direct manner that I appreciated. Thank you for coming. I know this wasn't an easy decision. What does he want? Claire asked without preamble. Derek's been in intensive therapy for 4 months now. He's working on substance abuse issues, but more importantly, he's working on the underlying trauma and personality disorders that led to his abusive behavior. Dr. Chun pulled out a file. He's made significant progress. Not perfect progress, but real change. And he's asked if he could speak to you both. Not to ask for anything, she added quickly, seeing our expressions. Just to apologize. Face to face. On your terms. No, Claire said immediately. Absolutely not. I understand. But I'll tell you what I told him, you don't owe him closure. You don't owe him forgiveness. You don't owe him anything. But sometimes, hearing an apology can help the victim as much as the perpetrator. It can help you see that what happened wasn't your fault, that the problem was always him. I looked at Claire. It's your choice, honey. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Claire was quiet for a long time. If I see him, she finally said, I want Mom there. I want a therapist present. And I want him to understand that this doesn't change anything. He's still never going to be alone with Oliver. Ever. All of those conditions are acceptable, Dr. Chen agreed. They brought Derek into a small meeting room. He looked different. Thinner, grayer, with none of the swagger I remembered. When he saw Claire, his eyes filled with tears, but he didn't move toward her. He just sat in his assigned chair and waited. Dr. Chun sat between us, a literal buffer. Derek, you asked for this meeting. Mrs. Thompson and Mrs. Wilson have agreed to hear what you have to say. Go ahead. Derek looked at his hands. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to believe me. But I need you to know that I understand now what I did to you. What I did to Oliver. What I did to our family. Go on, Dr. Chen prompted when he stopped. I've spent 4 months in therapy learning about something called generational trauma. My father was abusive to my mother. My grandfather was abusive to my grandmother. I grew up thinking that's what love looked like: control, dominance, fear. I saw my father hit my mother and tell her it was because he loved her. And I believed him. Derek's voice broke. So when I hit you, Claire, when I screamed at Oliver, some part of me thought I was being a good husband. A good father. Because that's what the men in my family did. That's not an excuse, Claire said coldly. I know. It's not. Nothing excuses what I did. But it's an explanation. I was sick, Claire. Not mentally ill in a way that removes responsibility, but sick in my soul. Infected with this poison that got passed down through my family for generations. He finally looked up at her. And I'm trying to become the person who breaks that cycle. So Oliver doesn't grow up to hurt someone the way I hurt you. The room was silent except for the ticking of a clock on the wall. Claire's hands were clenched so tight in her lap that her knuckles were white. You destroyed me, she said quietly. Do you understand that? The woman I was before I met you, confident, happy, full of dreams, you systematically destroyed every part of her. You made me believe I was worthless, that I was lucky you'd even put up with me, that no one else would ever want me. I know. No, you don't. Claire's voice rose. You don't know what it's like to flinch every time someone raises their voice. To apologize for things that aren't your fault because you're so used to everything being blamed on you. To watch your own son learn to be afraid of his father's moods. You broke us, Derek. You broke our family. You're right, Derek said, tears streaming down his face. You're right about all of it. And I can't fix it. I can't undo what I did. All I can do is make sure I never hurt anyone that way again. Good, Claire said. Do that. But do it away from us. She stood up to leave, but I stayed seated. There was something I needed to say. Derek, look at me. He did, reluctantly. I want you to understand something. The only reason you're sitting here having this conversation instead of in a jail cell or a grave is because of luck. Luck that Claire was strong enough to survive you. Luck that Oliver was resilient enough to bounce back. Luck that you overdosed before you could escalate further. I leaned forward. But luck runs out. And if you ever become that man again, there won't be second chances. Do you understand me? Yes, ma'am. I don't want your promises. I don't want your apologies. I want you to prove through your actions that you've changed. And until you can do that, until you can show years of consistent healthy behavior, you stay away from my daughter and my grandson. I will. I promise I will. We left him there, crying in that sterile room. In the car, Claire was silent for the first 20 miles. Then she said, Do you think people can really change? I thought about it carefully. I think some people can. But change takes more than wanting it. It takes work. Years of work. And even then, there's no guarantee. I glanced at her. Why? Are you thinking about giving him another chance? God no, Claire said immediately. Never. I wanted to see if what I felt was still fear. If seeing him would make me scared again. And I felt nothing. Looking at him was like looking at a stranger. Whatever power he had over me, it's gone. She smiled, a real, genuine smile. I'm free, Mom. I'm actually free. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something Derek said kept bothering me. About generational trauma. About cycles of abuse passing from father to son. I thought about James Thompson and the corruption investigation that was slowly destroying his reputation. I thought about Derek's grandfather, who I'd heard stories about, a cruel man who ruled his family with an iron fist. And I thought about Oliver. Sweet, gentle Oliver who'd seen and experienced more trauma in his 4 years than any child should. What if Derek was right? What if abuse was like a disease that got passed down unless someone deliberately stopped it? I got up and went to my computer. Started researching. Programs for children who'd witnessed domestic violence. therapy approaches for breaking generational patterns, support systems for teaching boys healthy masculinity. By morning, I had a plan. I called a family meeting, me, Claire, and surprisingly Robert. "I've been thinking," I said, "about what happens next. We've been so focused on surviving and escaping that we haven't thought about preventing." "Preventing what?" Claire asked. "Preventing Oliver from carrying this trauma into his own relationships someday. Preventing him from thinking what he saw was normal." I pulled out my research. There are programs specifically designed for kids like Oliver. Play therapy, art therapy, trauma-informed counseling. We need to get him into something like that now, before the patterns have a chance to set. Claire looked at the information I'd printed. "I had him in regular counseling, but this is different. This is specifically about breaking cycles." "Exactly. And there's more. I want to start that support group we talked about. But I want to include a component specifically for the children. So they get help too, not just their mothers." Robert leaned back in his chair. "That's ambitious, Margaret. Do you have any idea how much work that would take? How much organization?" "Then I'll organize it. I'm 72 years old and I'm retired. What else am I going to do with my time? Watch game shows and wait to die?" I looked at each of them. Something good has to come from what we went through. If Oliver's suffering can prevent even one other child from going through the same thing, then it wasn't for nothing. Claire's eyes filled with tears. "When did you become such a warrior, Mom?" "The day I decided my grandson's safety was more important than keeping the peace," I said simply. We spent the next 3 months building something extraordinary. The support group met every Tuesday night at the community center. We called it Breaking Chains, a name suggested by one of the first members, a woman who'd escaped 20 years of abuse. Patricia Morrison came to every meeting, sharing her perspective as someone who'd been married to a police officer who'd nearly been complicit in corruption. Officer Morrison himself came sometimes, talking about recognizing abuse and the importance of believing victims. Robert volunteered 2 hours every week for free legal consultations. A local therapist named Dr. James offered reduced-rate counseling services. The community center gave us the space for free. And the children, Oliver and a dozen others, had their own program running simultaneously. While the mothers talked in one room, the kids did art therapy in another, slowly processing their trauma through colors and shapes and play. I watched Oliver in these sessions. Watched him draw pictures of superheroes protecting people. Watched him play with other kids who understood his fears without him having to explain. Watched him slowly, week by week, become more confident, more open, more himself. One night, 6 months after we'd started the group, a new woman came. She was young, couldn't have been more than 25, with a baby on her hip and terror in her eyes. "I saw your flyer at the grocery store," she said. "Is it too late to join?" "It's never too late," Claire told her, standing up to welcome her. "Come in. You're safe here." As the meeting started, I looked around the room. 12 women of different ages, races, backgrounds, all connected by survival. All learning that they weren't alone. All finding the courage to break chains that had held them for too long. This was the real victory. Not the court cases or the custody battles, but this room full of people refusing to let abuse define them. After the meeting, as I was cleaning up, the young woman approached me. "Mrs. Wilson, I just wanted to say thank you. For starting this. For giving people like me a place to go." "You're welcome, honey. What's your name?" "Rachel. And this is Sam." She adjusted the baby on her hip. "He's 10 months old. I want to leave my boyfriend before Sam's old enough to remember. Before he grows up thinking it's normal for daddies to hurt mommies." I took her hand. "Then that's what we'll help you do. One step at a time. You're not alone anymore." As I drove home that night, I thought about all the dominoes that had fallen to get us here. If I hadn't walked out of that birthday party. If Claire hadn't found her courage. If Derek hadn't self-destructed. If Officer Morrison hadn't come forward. If Patricia hadn't given us those documents. Each choice, each moment of bravery, had led to this, a room full of survivors becoming warriors. A program that was already saving lives. A community that was learning to recognize and reject abuse. But there was still one more thing I needed to do. One more person who needed to know how this story had turned out. I pulled out my phone and found Derek's number. I hadn't contacted him since that one message months ago. But he deserved to know that something good had come from something terrible. We started a support group for domestic violence survivors. 12 families so far. Children's therapy program running alongside it. Your son is thriving. He's learning that what happened to him wasn't normal or acceptable. He's breaking the cycle you talked about. Thought you should know. His response came quickly. Thank you for telling me. I'm glad something good came from my mistakes. I'm still working on myself. Still trying to become someone Oliver could be proud of someday. Maybe someday I can volunteer with a program like that. Help other men recognize their patterns before they hurt someone. I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to say it was too little too late. But another part, the part that had built a life on second chances and new beginnings, recognized genuine change when I saw it. Maybe someday, I typed back. But not yet. You have a long road ahead of you. Stay on it. I will. I promise. Whether he kept that promise or not wasn't my responsibility anymore. I'd done what I could do. The rest was up to him. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw Claire's car parked in front of my house. She and Oliver were sitting on my porch steps, waiting for me. When Oliver saw my car, he jumped up and ran to meet me. Grandma. Grandma. I drew you a picture. He thrust a piece of paper at me, a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands. One tall, one medium, one small. The words "my family" were written across the top in Claire's handwriting. It's beautiful, I said, my voice catching. Is this you and Mommy and me? Yep. Ms. Sarah said I should draw the people who make me feel safe. So I drew us. He looked up at me with those wise eyes. You make me feel safe, Grandma. I knelt down and hugged him tight. You make me feel brave, sweetheart. Did you know that? Really? Really. Everything I did because you were worth fighting for. Claire joined us on the lawn, wrapping her arms around both of us. Thank you, Mom, she whispered. For everything. For fighting when I couldn't. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. For showing Oliver what real love looks like. That's what families do, I said. Real families. We fight for each other. We stood there in my front yard as the sun set, 3 generations of survivors and warriors, holding each other in the golden light. This was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not without scars, but real and true and hard-won. But healing isn't a destination, it's a journey. And ours was about to take an unexpected turn that would test everything we'd built. The phone call came exactly 1 year after that terrible birthday party. Derek's voice on the other end was steady but nervous. Margaret? I know I shouldn't be calling directly, but I needed to tell you something before you heard it from someone else. My guard went up immediately. What is it? My father died. Heart attack. 3 days ago. The funeral is tomorrow. He paused. I'm not asking you to come. I'm not asking for anything. I just thought you should know because, another pause. Because he left everything to Oliver in his will. The house, the money, everything. With the stipulation that it goes into a trust managed by you until Oliver turns 18. I sat down hard on my couch. He what? I know. I was shocked too. But apparently Dad had a change of heart in his last months. The corruption investigation destroyed him, Margaret. He lost his reputation, his friends, his standing in the community. And I think it forced him to see what he'd become. What he'd raised me to become. Derek's voice cracked. He left me a letter. It said he was sorry for teaching me that power was more important than love. That he hoped Oliver would grow up better than we did. I didn't know what to say. James Thompson, the man who tried to destroy us, had left his fortune to the grandson he'd barely known? It didn't make sense. Unless. He wanted to make amends, I said slowly. This was his way of apologizing. Yeah, that's what I think too. His lawyer says the trust is substantial. Oliver won't ever have to worry about money for college or anything else. Derek hesitated. Margaret, I don't want that money to come with strings attached. If you think accepting it would compromise Oliver in any way, turn it down. I'll understand. I thought about it. Thought about James Thompson and his corruption. Thought about blood money and moral compromises. But I also thought about Oliver's future. About college funds and security and opportunities. I'll accept it, I said finally. But only if we can put conditions on it. The money will only be used for Oliver's education and legitimate needs. Nothing frivolous. And when he's old enough, he'll learn the truth about where it came from and what his grandfather did. No sanitizing history. That's fair. More than fair. Derek was quiet for a moment. Will you tell Oliver about me? When he's older. I'll tell him the truth. That his father made terrible mistakes but tried to change. That he hurt people but took responsibility. That he broke cycles instead of continuing them. Whether Oliver wants a relationship with you someday will be his choice. That's all I can ask for. Derek's voice was thick with emotion. Thank you, Margaret. For everything. For protecting Oliver. For giving Claire the strength to leave. He stopped. For doing what my own mother never could. Standing up to the men who were destroying the family. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my living room and cried. Not for James Thompson, he'd made his choices and lived with the consequences. But for all the broken people in this story. For Derek, raised by wolves and trying to become human. For Claire, slowly piecing together a self that abuse had shattered. For Oliver, who'd carry scars he didn't ask for. And maybe a little bit for myself. For the grandmother who'd started this journey afraid to rock the boat and ended it as someone who'd capsized the whole damn ship to save the people she loved. Claire took the news about James's death calmly. I won't pretend I'm sad. But I won't celebrate either. He was a broken man who raised a broken son. That's tragedy enough. The trust fund caused more controversy. Some members of our support group questioned whether we should accept abuser money. Others argued that using it for Oliver's future was the ultimate justice, taking the resources of corruption and transforming them into opportunities for a child who'd survived it. We had a family meeting, me, Claire, Oliver, and surprisingly, Dr. Chun, who'd driven down to offer guidance. Oliver, do you understand what a trust fund is? I asked. He shook his head. At 5 years old, finance wasn't exactly his forte. It means that your grandfather, your daddy's daddy, left you money for when you're older. Money for college and for your future. The grandpa who was mean to Mommy? Claire and I exchanged glances. Yes, sweetheart. That grandpa. Oliver thought about it with the seriousness only a 5-year-old can muster. Did he say sorry? In his own way, yes. This money is his way of saying sorry. Okay then. We should take it. Miss Sarah says when people say sorry,